Welcome to today's session for Working with Workspace. Today we're going to be reviewing Google Vault, one of the more vital applications of Google Workspace for your organization. My name is Austin Reeder. I work here at SADA Systems as a Google Workspace sales engineer. I have been in the industry for around 7 years working on organizational digital transformations. And one of the things that really gets me excited is going through the migration process, looking at new tools, understanding how exactly we can implement a strategy that fits your business's needs. By definition, Vault is an information governance and eDiscovery tool for Google Workspace. It is a vital application for data retention, legal holds, searching, and exporting. It provides a level of comfort for security, legal, and eDiscovery teams at your organization. And it enables the ability to manage your organization's data behind the scenes for widely used applications such as Gmail and Google Drive. With Google Vault, you have information governance. What that means is that your organization's data retention policies can be customized to fit your unique retention requirements. This is very important. A lot of organizations have different requirements. And one of the exciting things about Vault is the ability to customize how long you retain this data. So you can set data retention policies to keep data for as long as you would need it. As end users delete data from their own user interface, your administration or your organization is still able to retain that data even after it's been deleted from that user's inbox, from their drive, recycling bin, however you'd like to look at it. But it also gives you the ability to purge data as it's no longer needed. It's very common for organizations to manage sensitive types of data. Some of this data needs to be deleted after a certain duration, whether it be 2 days or 7 years. Google Vault puts the power in your hands to identify what that time period is and purge the data as it's needed. So identifying what data needs to be analyzed is instrumental in the eDiscovery process. With Vault, your organization can utilize the Google search engine to query the exact data sets that are needed to be analyzed in a certain scenario. Once the proper data has been searched and analyzed, you have the ability to preserve that data between users, user groups, and applications. This is important for when you need to collect these data sets through exports that your organization can use externally and things like matter management tools when there are situations that involve litigation. Moving into access control and auditing, it's an extremely important part of this. We're talking about all of your organization's data, everything from Drive and Gmail to chat. There are specific people in the organization who might be allowed to have access to all of this data, and there are other individuals or teams that may only need access to some of this data. With Google Vault, you have the ability to identify who those users are who need access to specific sets of data and specify exactly what they're allowed to have access to. In addition to that, you have the ability to audit all of the activity in the console. And so when you have subsets of administrators or teams that are working in the console, you can always refer to the audit logs to identify what changes have been made and how many holds, retention policies, or exports have been completed in a certain amount of time. That said, I'd love to jump right into a Google Vault demo. Moving into the user interface of Google Workspace, you will have a super admin who will be responsible for assigning the roles. Just like we talked about with access, there may be different individuals at your organization who have access to Google Vault versus some that don't. As a super admin, they may start in the admin console, which is the screen we're seeing here. At any point in time, a user with access to Vault can simply navigate to their waffle menu in the top right corner. By selecting this, you'll see a set of your applications. Simply find the Google Vault icon and select it. Now that we're in Vault, I'm actually going to move into the new user interface. As you can see, the old interface is going away May 24th, and so we would love to do a quick demo of exactly what the user interface will look like going forward. It's much cleaner and easier to use than what was previously available. As we mentioned before, you have the ability to set retention policies. Here in the retention area of the admin console, you can simply select retention, and here you'll see your default rules. These rules govern all of the data for the applications in your organization. So you can see here on the left-hand side, we have the Gmail service, Drive, Groups, Chat, and Meet. In this example, you can see how the duration has been set to indefinitely. This means that even as users delete data within the user interface as an end user, the data is still being retained by the organization. So depending on what the requirements of your organization are, you may want to change these. For example, if we wanted to modify exactly how long we wanted to keep Gmail messages, if the retention period was not indefinitely, we could set a specific amount of days in which we want to purge messages. But in this case, our organization would like to keep that indefinitely. If there was a situation where your organization was not keeping data indefinitely through these default retention rules, you have the ability to set custom rules. Now, this is really cool because if you have specific groups like a legal team that has to retain data indefinitely while the rest of your organization does not, then the default rules may be set to a time period, let's say 1 year. But the custom rules can be created around a specific group. So if we go in here for Gmail, and if our use case is that our legal team needs to have all data retained indefinitely, then we can select Gmail as a service. We can pick the organizational unit. Let's say that this would be the legal team. And then we can set the conditions. So let's just say from today, until 2130, we would like to keep this data. Now, I understand that this may not be specifically indefinitely, but it definitely covers the time period in which we would like to retain that data. And these settings can be modified over time. You can also set query terms that do things like keep individuals exempt or keep specific emails exempt from this. In our use case today, we won't jump into the query terms, but it can be very helpful for making a specified retention rule. Moving forward to the duration and action, this is where you can say that all of that data from the time range that we just selected can be kept indefinitely. So I'm going to select indefinitely. You can also use a retention period in order to specify the exact amount of time which you would like to retain that data. But for our use case, we would like to keep it. Now we have a custom retention rule. Now I get a lot of questions about how custom retention rules interact with default retention rules. The big thing to remember here is that the system is going to observe the retention rule that is retaining the data the longest. So if you have a default retention rule for 1 year and you have your custom rule for the legal team indefinitely, then the custom rule, because it is a longer duration, will retain the data past the period of that default retention rule. There are also some settings. They're still working on this portion of the console, but you have the ability to modify exactly how your data is retained for Meet recordings, whether you would like them to observe the Drive rule or the Meet rule. Going back to our Vault home for the new user interface, we also have Matters. Remember, we talked about searching and identifying what that data should be. So in order to identify exactly what data we want, we need to search for it. So we are going to have a search example. In our search example, we can choose a service. Let's go with Gmail. We can look for all data and specific accounts. So if there's a member from the legal team that we would like to query their data for, let's say it's Ryan, then we can go ahead and look for all of Ryan's data within Gmail from a specific time period. So let's look at Ryan's data for the past month. As you can see, I set the start date to 1 month previously until today's date. And again, in this case, we will not have query terms because I would like to see all of his emails. You can see how fast this returns the results. So we have 19 results. They were returned within about a second. And this is exactly the data I was looking for. So you get to do a little bit of a prerequisite audit of the data. Everything looks right to me. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now that we have it saved, I have the opportunity to export this data. So if there was some sort of matter that we needed to export the data immediately, we could jump right into this. We could call it Ryan's example export. You can select the data region. I'm going to go with United States. And then you also get to choose the format in which this is exported in. So we have inbox and PST. We typically are agnostic to the format. So whatever your organization uses, or maybe the matter management tool uses a specific format, you have the ability to modify that here. And then you can view the status of that export. Now let's say that there was some sort of indication that we needed to place a hold on someone. So as this export is running, I'm going to move away to the hold screen. So if Ryan was an individual at the company who was involved in litigation, he's on the legal team, the company may be involved in a legal case, and what we want to do is ensure that all of Ryan's data is held in a way that works in our favor. And what I mean by that is the retention policies that we talked about earlier. If the legal retention policy for that custom rule was not to retain data indefinitely, this is where we have the ability to put a magnifying glass on exactly what data we want to retain. So in this case, we would create a hold name for Ryan. We want to keep all of his Gmail data. We type in his account for specific accounts. Please note that you can also do this by organizational unit. So if we wanted to put a hold on the entire legal team because there was some sort of litigation in process, you could also do that. But in this case, Ryan is the only one involved in this court case or this litigation. And so we will want to start retaining his data from the day that this litigation began. And maybe set a date out in the future for when we expect it to close, or maybe further in the future for when we would expect that we may no longer need this data to be retained. Now, this part is important. We want to make sure that we're being cognizant of how long we're keeping this data. So what Google offers you to do in Vault is, as the court case or as the litigation is moving through the process, you can come into the console at any point in time and remove a legal hold from someone. So as this is created, you can see it here in my list of holds. Here's Ryan's hold, right? And if the court case is completed, if the litigation is done, and we've seen the due process completed, we can come in and delete this rule so Ryan is no longer under a legal hold. Keep in mind this is also applicable to users who have left the company. So as long as there is a licensed user, you are able to retain legal holds and retain data of users who are no longer there. Moving on to reports. Earlier, we talked about the ability to audit the system. This is very important as well because different people have access to do different things. As changes are made to retention policies, legal holds, matters, even audits themselves, it's very important that your organization has the ability to come in here and identify exactly what changes have been made. Going back to that hold that I created on Ryan earlier, I can come to this user hold tab and see how many holds that Ryan has. So you can see that here's Ryan's test, right? He has been involved in 3 matters at the time, and it gives you a holistic view of exactly what you can see here in the console. Holds can also be placed on groups, as I mentioned earlier. So you may have the legal team placed into a hold as a group. You would see that hold appear here in the screen. And then within your domain, you have the ability to see all of the holds within your domain. So as you're creating holds, there could be many different types of holds that are created. And this gives you a high-level view or insights into exactly what type of configuration your holds have been set up within Google Vault. If you would like to audit specific activities, this is the screen where you have the ability to customize exactly what you're looking for. So going back to a very specific search, you can see that there are users that can be searched, there are applications that can be searched, and then all of this information can be downloaded via CSV, uploaded into another system, analyzed through the spreadsheet, or used any way at your disposal. That said, it concludes our Vault demo, but I'd like to go back and just review a couple of things that we talked about today. Going back to supported data types, this is a question that we get a lot. It's important that you understand that the majority of Google Workspace services are covered when it comes to data retention and Google Vault. Just to show you a few, we have Gmail, Drive, Groups, Chat, Classic Hangouts, Google Meet, and Google Voice. Make sure you're understanding what types of data is being supported as you're placing these retention policies and legal holds on users. Another vital piece of this are license requirements. Make sure that your organization has purchased license SKUs that do make Google Vault available. Please contact your sales representative if you have any questions on the available license SKUs or the ones that you have in your tenant today. I would like to conclude by saying thank you very much for your time. I'm glad we were able to review Google Vault, which is a vital tool for your organization to retain data, place legal holds, search, audit, and export your company's data in a way that meets your business requirements.